Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you kindly for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Let me start off with some photographs of my hometown of Mombasa. This is from Kenya Pics, October the 6th. The magnificent sunrise over Mombasa Island looked pretty magnificent to me. And on December the 26th, I took a photograph from pretty much the same situation, but I pointed it at Fort Jesus. I'll post that photograph as well. Dad came from Mombasa yesterday and said there'd been quite a lot of rains. And I'm out there thinking I'm a panther sniffing the air for El Nino. But so far we haven't seen it. Of course, this Saturday I hope to see you folks at Mindspeak. We've got Pradeep Panrana of ARM Cement as our guest. This is the Sankara. Serving tea or coffee from around 9:30. We'll start on the dot at 10. Jamie McGeever retweeted RenCap man Charlie Robertson at 17.968 trillion. The US economy is bigger than the rest of the G7 combined, which is something worthy of thinking about. Home thoughts, hand and foot bones of Homo naledi indicate an ability to swing around branches as well as walk on 2 feet. Photographs by Peter Schmidt and Will Harcourt Smith. That took me back to the stone hand axes that we saw in Olagasai. That was a couple of years ago. Lovely article in the New York Times about Andy Warhol, who drove Route 66. Much has been made of how Andy Warhol's glam pop approach to everyday objects and celebrities transformed the American art world. But less has been known about how a 1963 drive from New York to Los Angeles inspired the artist's personal metamorphosis. Before this, he was called Raggedy Andy, said Deborah Davis, author of The Trip, which examines Warhol's journey. He dressed in chinos, he was tongue-tied, he was searching for what he should paint. Then he took this trip and realized he had to package himself differently. He dressed in black, he opened the factory. That was when he became Warhol. Then we put up a photograph of the Andy Warhol Bridge in Pittsburgh, which was the artist's hometown. Another one of a motel on Route 66 that I found on Flickr, captured sort of that Americana. And then a couple of quotes. In the future, everybody will be world famous for 15 minutes. And, plenty of truth in that. And then as soon as you stop wanting something, you get it. Political reflections. US President Barack Obama has apologized to the medical aid charity Médecins Sans Frontières for what the White House described as a terrible, tragic mistake, and indeed it was. I don't know what to say, I don't know what the facts are, but bombing hospitals is not the best way of going about things. Interesting quote from a Bloomberg View article. Not only is an outright military victory against the Houthis highly unlikely, it will do nothing to solve Yemen's underlying political problems, and I couldn't agree with that more. That's why I'm very bearish on this Saudi intervention. And listen to this. Somalia looks safer for Yemenis fleeing state breakdown. This is Bloomberg. Even before the conflict, Yemen imported 90% of its food. Now, a naval blockade has choked supplies and sent the prices of foodstuffs soaring sixfold. About 13 million Yemenis have little access to food in a country that already had one of the highest levels of malnutrition in the world. Half of them are on the brink of famine, and half are eating just one meal a day. Widespread hunger risks undermining Yemen's progress and reducing the mortality rate to near the global average. Let's move on to Russia. Shoigu said that warships had carried out 26 cruise missile strikes against 11 targets. Russian warships in the Caspian Sea have launched rockets at IS in Syria which hit their targets. Russian efforts will be synchronized with the actions of the Syrian army on the ground, and the actions of our air force will effectively support the offensive operation of the Syrian army, Putin. In addition to the air force, 4 warships of the Caspian flotilla have been involved. This is Shoigu again, adding that the warships had carried out 26 cruise missile strikes against 11 targets, and concluded by saying the intensity of the strikes is increasing. And that left me thinking, first of all, Putin is now showboating. Put up a photograph of a Russian Navy ship launching a cruise missile in the Caspian Sea. Take you back to what I wrote over the weekend, Putin is a geopolitical grandmaster. And I said, how he'd been placed under tremendous pressure by the oil warfare specialist Barack Obama, wrestling the price of oil from above $100 to below $50 a barrel, was always intended to wither Russia's power and send it into a tailspin, and I think that's clearly was the intention. Let us return to UNGA, where Putin set out his stall, and I quote, "I cannot help asking those who caused the situation, do you realize now what you've done?" With hundreds of thousands of refugees entering Europe, his question was a sharp one. Within 24 hours of delivering that speech at the UN, Russia instructed that the US should vacate Syrian airspace. This message was not delivered to Ashton Carter by his Russian counterpart Shoigu. It was delivered to the US Embassy in Baghdad, and pretty soon after that message was delivered, Russia began its intervention on the side of President Assad. I said then you could hear the squealing starting immediately from Ankara to Riyadh. From the GCC to Washington, all these capitals have assets on the ground in Syria. And what is clear is that Russia is not making a distinction between IS or the moderate opposition fighting Assad, which really means our terrorists. Lavrov said if it looks like a terrorist, if it acts like a terrorist, if it walks like a terrorist, if it fights like a terrorist, it's a terrorist, right? I said Putin fancies himself the flycatcher in Syria, the fly trap. The Russian embassy tweeted a photograph of President Putin when he had that interview with Charlie Rose. I'll post that. Let's move on to the markets. Deutsche Bank is bracing for a record pre-tax loss of €6 billion in the third quarter as new boss John Cryan is drawing a line under his predecessor's performance. Bank is taking massive write-downs at its investment banking unit and on 2 assets earmarked for disposal, its Postbank retail bank and the stake it owns in China's Huaxia Bank. It is also setting aside more money for litigation. The news is not good, and I expect a number of you will be very disappointed by it, said the new CEO, but clearly throwing the baby in the bathwater out, clearing the decks. Let's move on now to the currency markets. The euro popped above 113, it's back at 112.90. Dollar index slightly lower from 95.48 at market opening. Dollar yen 119.82, Swissy 0.9723. The pound 153.27. The Aussie is at 0.7181. I think it's a buy actually. India rupee 65.125. South Korean won 11.58.15. Brazilian real 3.8820. Egyptian pound 7.82.86. And the rand 13.51.70. I think the rand's a buy as well. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index, and I expect a further pullback in that for now. Euro dollar, it's interesting that there was some quite bearish news came out of Germany, but the euro strengthened to 112.91. Obviously the Fed will be speaking later today, will be announcing the minutes, and people will be looking at that very keenly. Gold, let me put up a chart there, last trading at 11.43.65, key resistance is at 11.55. I think we tested and they could probably run up to around 1200. Crude oil, last trading at $48.51. I think it could rally as high as 55. Emerging markets, China's stocks and yuan rally after a week-long break as they tried catching up to the global rally, says Holger. Sub-Saharan Africa, Africa's governance. This is from the Mo Ibrahim report. The Economist is calling us the stalling continent. An important measure of progress is showing little of it, and you can see from this image. Charlie Robertson, the top 20 economies in 2015. Since the IMF estimate in April, Russia is up 2 places. Africa, 53, is bigger than India. That's interesting, isn't it? Congo's 25th October referendum likely to lead to violent protests and riots in Brazzaville and Pointe Noire. This is IHS James Country Risk Report. Government of the Republic of Congo announced on October 5 that it will hold a referendum on 25th of October on a new constitution that will remove existing presidential term limits and age restrictions, effectively allowing President Denis Sassou Nguesso, who is currently constitutionally barred from seeking an additional mandate, to stand for election scheduled in August 2016. And this goes back to my theory about the street and how it's infinitely stronger, and I think we're going to see, I'd agree with Jane's defense analysis, that we're definitely going to see a sharpened friction in that country. Burundi has expelled a Rwandan diplomat as tensions rise. Salvatore Tako Bamaze, permanent secretary of Burundi's Ministry of External Relations and International Cooperation, said the diplomat Desiree Nyaraburi has been expelled but declined to give any further explanation. He said the expulsion was most likely due to the diplomat's alleged contacts with putschists hosted in Rwanda. It is not a problem with the country, but a problem with an individual, since he is reported to be in permanent contact with coup plotters. Martin Kobler told journalists the political space is shrinking for opponents. This is in the DRC. And he's saying it is important to have a credible, balanced electoral process. Interesting piece in Rubini's Econo Monitor, the impact of currency wars in oil exporting Africa. Since lower oil prices typically result in depreciation of the oil exporters' currencies, the dramatic plunge of oil prices has severe implications for sub-Saharan Africa. Talking about what happened after the global financial crisis, but saying that the early effects of a stronger dollar in Africa have been very extensive. Describing the Naira, oil prices plunged below $50. Nigeria began to limit dealing and prevent dollar outflows, saying that this policy stance may prove untenable over time, however, and I tend to agree with that. Angola Kwanza, talking about Angola's currency depreciation and several others, and I wrote about this on the 8th of June 2015 when I talked of sub-Saharan African currency bloodbath. Zimbabwe's formal employment plummets to a half-century low. The collapse of Zimbabwe's manufacturing and agricultural industries has cut the size of the economy by half and left the southern African nation with fewer people in formal employment than at any time in almost half a century. 700,000 people have formal jobs, almost equally split between the state and private companies. That's the lowest number since 1968. Pretty horrendous. Basically, President Mugabe has presided over the collapse of the economy. The size of the civil service has tripled in 35 years. Charlie Robertson again, South Africa was described at the FT Africa conference as a colossus in Africa, but it's very nearly slipped to third place, he's saying. South African all shares rallied 6.03% over the last 4 weeks. It's now up 5.62% year to date. Dollar rand, I expect the rebound to gain steam and probably take us to about 13. Egyptian pound at 782.98, but of course it's very managed. Egyptian stock market plus 1.59% yesterday, down 17.61% year to date. Nigerian all share minus 13.03% in 2015. Ghana's stock exchange composite index is down 9.66% year to date. Interesting piece in Bloomberg: Kenya's borrowing costs bear brunt in battle to defend currency. Yields on treasury bills have surged to the highest levels in more than 3.5 years as the central bank attempts to entice foreign investors into buying the securities, attracting dollars into the economy and taking shillings out of the system. Rates on Kenya's 91-day notes last week rose above those of Uganda for the first time since July 2014. As rates go up, we're likely to see foreign investors bring money into the market. That is surely the intention. The Central Bank of Kenya is willing to stomach high rates. It's all about the shilling. They feel they have room to do this without negatively affecting inflation. So far, the efforts are paying off. The currency of East Africa's largest economy has declined less against the dollar than neighbours Tanzania and Uganda, which have seen their shillings slide more than 20% to record lows. Kenyan shilling dropped 12% against the dollar this year. Yields, where they are now, messes up the whole economy. It's really paramount that they contain rates for the sake of the economy. If they try to drop rates aggressively, then that will renew pressure on the shilling. Yesterday I said my trade of the month, or supreme conviction trade, whatever you want to call it, is to buy 1-year treasury bills, borrow in dollars and run the carry. I think you'll get an FX gain and you'll get a strong gain in the price of the treasury bill as rates come low. CFC Stanbic have a purchasing managers index, and that index for September was at 51.9, the lowest since the launch of the index last year. I expect a sub 5% full year GDP print, so a sharp slowdown in H2. MPs want the National Treasury, PS and Kenya Revenue Authority to explain the cash crisis that has seen CDF disbursement being withheld for 3 months. Wednesday, they directed the relevant committees to summon the officials. Parliament had a power blackout from Friday last week until Monday, when the electricity was reconnected, reportedly after the intervention of the head of the civil service, Joseph Kinyua. This cash squeeze, I've concluded, is raising alarm bells. Kenya shilling just above 103, I think will be below 100 at year end. Nairobi all share down 12.39% year to date. NSE 20 bounced 0.18% off 2015 closing low, admittedly, remains down 20.36% year to date. Family Bank will raise up to 6 billion shillings through its first bond issue that also gives investors choices in both interest rates and currencies. Interesting development. Yesterday what was strong was Sini Tea rallied 6.67%. To close at 16, my target is 20 by year end. Williamson Tea also rallied 6.02% to close at 370. Tea prices have been in a sweet spot for the most part, and the weaker shilling has further juiced earnings. Safaricom unchanged at 1465, but bear in mind, they're sitting on seriously cash-generative business. They were sitting on 14 billion shillings at the full year mark. You can see that they're now getting a lot more interest on that money. KCB unchanged at 45, traded 11.395 million shares, and on a trading PE of 7.993, it looks very egregious. Equity also was heavily traded, 12.791 million shares. Co-op Bank was also stronger, up 2.84%. Kenol Cobil closed at a 10-week high, up 7.14% over the last 4 weeks, and that's in a very weak market, so it's worthy of comment. And BAT was low ticked 5.13% to close at 758. All the moves up have been on heavy volume, all the moves down have been on very low volume, which is a powerful message in itself. Hope to see it mind speak. And remember, if you want to follow the stock market during trading hours, you can leave it running up on your desktop. Just click onto rich.co.ke, register. If any problems, get hold of us, and we'll make sure that registration goes through, and you can just run it in the background like I do and keep an what's happening. Once again, hope to see you at Mindspeak.